Joined now by our international correspondent, Alex Newman. Alex, as always, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Duke. Great to be with you.
Well, there's a little bit of schadenfreude in this story for me because I've been saying for like 10 years and no one has listened to me. You got these universities and these university administrators who are screaming about sexism, racism, bigotry. They're talking about how our young girls are getting raped on college campuses. One out of every 5 girls on a college campus gets raped. Half of them are sexually assaulted. That we have nothing more. We have all sorts of racial incidents on our campus. And my response has already been, good. Good. Then let's fire the administrators. You're the people in charge of this. If indeed these lying, inflated numbers are true, then you should be fired, Mr. President, Mr. Chancellor. It's amazing how they've gotten away with this, right? Inflating these numbers to get more political activism, to get more money on campus, to get more attention, but then not being responsible for demonstrating that it's not true anymore. And Princeton University, one of the great Ivy League schools, has just done it and got called on it for the first time. Explain that story, Alex.
Yeah, this really is and I think it's a hilarious story, and I can't tell you how big I was smiling when I found out about this. So the president of Princeton University confessed that, under pressure from the progressive left-wing Looney Tunes, confessed that Princeton is actually this horrible racist institution, and it's plagued by systemic racism, and there's also the conscious incidents of bias and all the rest of it. And so, he did the standard progressive, oh, we're so racist, please forgive us. We don't even know that we're racist, but now we know that we're racist because we've been educated by the Marxists. And the Department of Education said, wait a minute here. You guys, every single year when you're applying for federal taxpayer money, promise and claim and swear that you are not racist and that you do not discriminate on the basis of race. It's required under the 1964 Civil Rights Act to be able to get federal money. So both of those things can't be true. You can't be plagued by racism and conscious examples of bias and at the same time certify that you are not discriminating based on race. And so now the U.S. Department of Education has launched an investigation. And, Betsy DeVos, people who watch this program know I'm not the biggest Betsy DeVos fan in the world, but she went on the radio and said, no, this is very serious. We need some answers here. Either they're racist or they're not. They can't be both. Let's find out what's going on here.
And again, I'm with you. You and I have both been very critical of her Common Core protectionism, her background in Common Core, her refusal to do anything to really change the makeup of the actual classroom in terms of what kids have been learning as our Secretary of Education. But on a lot of other issues, she's been good, including pushing back against the Obama Dear Colleague letter that allows young men to be persecuted without due process for claims of sexual harassment on campus. She's done a lot of things like that, including this one. So she's taking Princeton at their word. Finally, right? These college professors have been appeasing the left, have doing their progressive mea culpas, right? We are nothing but hotbeds of racism and prejudice and bigotry and homophobia and misogyny, and they've never been called for it. If you are presiding over that kind of a school, you have to step down. All of your diversity officers have to be fired. All of your chancellors and vice chancellors and deans need to go. You need to rehaul how you do faculty tenure. If you've tenured radical racist, as you seem to be claiming, professors who do nothing to combat the climate of bigotry and intolerance, they got to go too. Bring everybody new in. Now, we're a long way from that. But Betsy DeVos said to them, okay, by your own admission now, in your confession to the Marxist left, we're going to investigate you. And the thing, too, that gets me, Alex, is now that it happened, you have university professors and universities all across the country who are begging the Federal Department of Education not to investigate Princeton. Don't do this. If you do this, right, you'll be shaming them. You'll be getting in the way of this. You can see from the outrage of all the other schools that they don't want this to happen to themselves either.
That's right. There's almost 100 university presidents, some of them very significant institutions, who are begging the Department of Education, please stop, don't call us on our hypocrisy and our lies. But, the Department of Education says, sorry, the law requires us to do this. You don't want us to obey the law. You don't want us to investigate. If you're telling us there's racism all over your university, how can we continue sending you all these federal tax dollars if you guys are a bunch of racists and you're discriminating? And the reality is most of these institutions are discriminating. In fact, Princeton has a policy, so do many other universities, to try to allow more preferred races in at the expense of other people who actually earn their spot there. That is racial discrimination. But I think the Department of Education is doing exactly the right thing here. Betsy DeVos deserves some credit. So does Trump.
He does, and that's why another reason voting for Trump is not an option. It is a mandate this year. After the break, we're going to talk more about this, Alex. Back again with Alex Newman, and at the end of our first segment, Alex, we left it with, this is not an option to vote for Donald Trump. You may not like his demeanor, you may not like his attitude, you may not like his swagger and his posturing, but the fact that he is overseeing a Department of Education, unlike the Arne Duncan Department of Barack Obama, which gave us Common Core, that is at least willing to call out this kind of dishonest race mongering, right? To actually enforce. We talked about how over 100 university officials are begging the Department of Education not to investigate Princeton's claims that they're racist. I mean, can you imagine how unwoke that is? In this day and age, you've got all of these woke ringleaders begging the federal government not to do a racial investigation of a institution that just claimed that they were full of racists.
This whole incident, Duke, just so perfectly illustrates the utter insanity, the utter idiocy that has taken over academia. How can they claim on the one hand that they're not racist, and then on the other hand claim that they are racist, and then claim that racism is evil, but then claim that the federal government shouldn't investigate when they admit that they're racist? I mean, you cannot hold all these things in your brain at the same time simultaneously and believe them all to be true. This is the ultimate example of cognitive dissonance, and yet these are the people running the institutions that are supposedly training up the leaders of tomorrow. Can you imagine what the leaders of tomorrow are going to look like when the leadership of these universities can say two things that are completely contradictory, that cannot coexist at the same time? I mean, what happened to basic logic? What happened to the law of non-contradiction? It's so utterly absurd, and yet these people seem to not realize how incredibly absurd it is.
Well, to these idiots, reason, law, non-contradiction are all white supremacist holdovers of Greek wisdom, right? But here's what you and I both know what's really going on. These professors, these administrators, these college presidents, they really are racist, but not in the way they say they are. They're not universities are not places of racism against black and minority students. These are places that are bending over backwards to skirt the law to get those kids in. Completely unprepared kids who are not ready to succeed at a junior college, let alone the Ivy League, are getting in now because of the actual racism that's being experienced. We know with Harvard University, they just lost another lawsuit, right? The federal government's gone after them again, and they've already lost in one court about the idea that they are prejudiced against Asian Americans, right? So Asian Americans outperform both whites and blacks in the classroom and on the standardized test, but places like Harvard are radically limiting the number of Asians that get in to favor more black and brown-skinned candidates. In this case, literally discriminating against one minority group to benefit two others. So there are plenty of racism on college campuses, but it has nothing to do with targeting black and brown-skinned minorities. It going after white and Asian kids.
It is. And when you think about this racism, Duke, it really is nefarious. It's horrifying. Imagine how you would feel as a very dark-skinned person at Harvard University, knowing that the university is deliberately discriminating against Asians, for example. You're always going to wonder, did I get in because of my skin color, or did I get in because I really deserve to be here? That's incredibly unfair to the people who actually earned their way into these institutions. And frankly, I think at this point, and I tell everybody who asks, don't send your kids to these idiot factories, these indoctrination centers posing as institutions of higher learning. They're disgraceful. Your kids can get all that knowledge and more outside of it without going deep into debt. And why, right? They've really just become progressive Marxist indoctrination centers. They serve no useful purpose other than raising up the next generation of dumbed down revolutionaries ready to tear down our society. And all of this, I think, is a perfect illustration of this insanity that has taken over academia. And I think it really shows you, after you get the tax subsidies out, all this would collapse in a free market. We ought to go back to a free market system and let all this idiocy collapse under the weight of its own contradictions.
Alex Newman, the Newman Report, thanks a lot. Again, like I said, we've been saying it for a long time, and it's finally good that someone has called out the universities on their BS. Hey guys, most of you know that our little Dr. Duke show is being hidden and demonetized by the creepy crawlers at YouTube and Facebook. Sadly, this impacts our long-term ability to produce the kind of quality show that you've gotten used to. So we've decided to tackle the problem by launching our own new Patriot Club. Yes, for 99 tax-deductible dollars once a year, 99, you will not only keep our show going, but we'll ship you this fabulous stainless steel tumbler, etched with the American flag and the words, "Freedom never tasted so good." Visit patriotclub.us and become a Patriot member today. That's patriotclub.us to support our show and to drink from the font of freedom.